The mind is the place of emotions and desires. But the soul is the source of emotions and desires.
What might be the problem with playing video games? I'm not hurting anyone. There's no sex involved. I'm just playing video games.
When we create a virtual reality that is actually unreality, and we start finding stimulation in that, then that becomes a replacement to spiritual reality. So some video games may actually help a person develop better language skills, motor skills, better negotiation skills.
So my next question that we have is, does a monk have to give up his relationship with family and friends and be more mindful? I mean, what's the point of that?
The word give up again has a negative connotation. We could use a more positive word as let go. So the idea over here is that we have a purpose in life. And monks, while monks can be for various traditions, in general, the idea of monkhood is that we're pursuing something higher, something spiritual. And then whatever obstructs somebody on the spiritual journey, they try to keep a distance between that. So now, is it that friends and family can obstruct? Well, they can, but will they always obstruct? Not necessarily. So in general, we have to look at what is my purpose and how are my current relationships contributing to or obstructing in my purpose. So in general, traditionally, monks were expected to say stay away from their home. There was something called gurukul or ashrams, where monks would be away from their family, because most people have particular set of priorities. Those priorities center on making it big in the world or having a good life in the world, whereas a monkhood is often centered on pursuing something bigger than this world, something beyond this world. So because the values and purposes are different, sometimes there can be conflict. However, over a period of time, initially some distancing might be required, but after a monk is well situated in their monkhood, then they can reconnect. They are strong enough so that they will not get diverted by others. Rather, they can share their spirituality as is appropriate with others. So personally, I stay well connected with my father, my brother, my friends, and we interact regularly. And initially, they couldn't appreciate what I was doing. They thought that I was an engineer and I was giving up education. And one of my professors came and told me that India, there are so many students competing to be an engineer. Because you became a monk, India lost an engineer. So I told you, I was tongue in cheek at that time. I would be more polite. I said, India didn't lose an engineer, America lost an engineer. What I meant was most Indians, after they get good education, they come to America and settle over here. Many educated Indians.
Right.
So, but anyway, now many years later, I met that same professor, and then he had seen some of the books that I had written, and he saw that okay, I'm doing something meaningful in my life, and now I could also appreciate. He was my well-wisher, but his values were different. He couldn't appreciate it. So I think that once a person is well situated in monkhood, then it is they can reconnect. But initially, some level of self-preservation is essential, and if we are associated with people whose values and purposes are at conflict with ours, then it is difficult.
Next question. There are a lot of self-help gurus on social media sharing so much advice. How do we discern between what advice to take, what is real, and what is just some sort of a marketing gimmick? What is fake?
Yeah.
I was told that India manufactures yogis. They have manufacturing plants for yogis.
True. There are two ways of looking at this. One is that there are some self-help gurus who are good and others are bad. So we look at it from a digital perspective. Another is we look at it from an analog perspective. That there are different people who can offer different levels of help. And there are some people who can offer the highest help, some people can offer intermediate help. And there are some who may also cause harm. So it's a spectrum. Now, ultimately, it is for the individual to take responsibility. The Bhagavad Gita, which is the book that I study and share primarily, the Bhagavad Gita is spoken by God. In the tradition, Krishna is considered to be the divine descendant to the world. But the Bhagavad Gita does not give any pat answers to Arjuna. Rather, it equips Arjuna to think. And at the end says, Vimrishaita dasheshena yathechisi tathagu. So deliberate deeply and do as you desire. So it is, the Gita is equipping Arjuna that, okay, you have a variety of options, you have a variety of teachers, you have a variety of choices in you, career paths, life trajectories. Now you deliberate and you decide. My understanding, I sometimes use this acronym called TEST, TEST. So I'm not going to say that this is the path you should follow, but I'll try to share some criteria which you can apply to a particular teacher or a particular path and decide, is this work for me? So T is time honored. So that is, if we consider spiritual truths, they are timeless. We may have pre-modern, modern, postmodern times, but still we need the sun for illumination. We may get the sunlight through tube lights and other things, but still we need the sun. So spiritual truths are timeless, and that's why it is always better to not get caught with the latest fads. So there might be new forms of doing yoga, and that is fine, but yoga itself is timeless. So if you want to learn yoga, look at people who are in traditions which are time honored. This is something, this is a
Time honored.
Time honored. T is time honored. This is something which has been a human need throughout human history. The longing for meaning, the longing for transcendence. And so T is time honored. Then E is explanatory. That when we go, it should not, when we go into some teacher, it should not be just nice sounding words, platitudes, and affirmations. All that is helpful. But we should be able to understand. There should be explanation about who we are, about what our purpose in life is. There should be some level of philosophical clarity that should come. Otherwise, okay, we can get some helpful tips from them, but it could very well be like a painkiller. It's not really a curative medicine. And there are times when pain medication is also required, but pain medication is not a replacement for curative medicine. So E is explanatory. Then S is scripturally based. Now the word scripture sometimes can have a negative connotation, but what it means is that people can be brilliant and they can come up with their own ideas, and that's good. They come up with their own ideas, with their brilliance. But we are limited by their brilliance. There are wisdom texts which have guided millions for millennia, and if somebody is teaching something based on those wisdom texts, then there is authority beyond, there's authority and authenticity that goes beyond personal charisma. Personal charisma is great. So this is what I would look for is, okay, you are teaching something, what is it based on? Are they based on some wisdom texts? What are those wisdom texts? And then last would be TEST is transformative. Look within your heart. Is it making a positive transformation? And here I differentiate between feeling good and becoming good. Transformative is, I do this particular exercise, I do this particular practice, and I feel so good after that. Okay, I feel good after that. But is it changing me to become a better person? Or is it just a way that I'm patting myself on the back for what I am? So transformation should be happening. So that's the way we can try to look through the various gamut of self-help teachers we may have and see what would be of optimal benefit for us.
Beautifully explained. This is a following question that another student asks. I think you already partially answered it. He says, I prefer going to a therapist who is actually certified. How is a monk from an uncertified life coach? What certifies monks, as in you, to give advice?
Okay.
So why should anyone listen to a monk?
Fair question. Again, when we say someone is certified, the question comes, who has certified them? So we could say, okay, there are trained therapists, and they can offer their own, they play an important role in society. However, the Gita tradition differentiates between the mental level and the spiritual level. In the West, often there is this mind and matter. So matter is physical reality, and anything beyond matter is called. But the Gita differentiates that there is the physical reality, there is the mental, and there is the spiritual. There are two levels of realities. And most of therapy addresses the mental level. It does not address the spiritual. So how do I differentiate between the two? The mind is the place of emotions and desires. But the soul is the source of emotions and desires. So the mind is the place where we experience our emotions, our desires. But the soul is the source of them. And so another example could be that we are the users, So we are not just our emotions. We are not just our feelings. We are the feelers of our feelings. And that capacity to observe our feelings is something which is distinctive to us human beings. So therapists can help us to better deal with our feelings, better deal with our emotions, and that's good. But therapists generally can't tell us, and in fact, they're professionally told not to tell that this is the meaning and purpose of life. It is okay, you decide what is the meaning and purpose of life, and it's okay, you choose your desires. So they don't deal with the spiritual level. Now, even as spiritualists, we are not going to tell others what is the meaning and purpose of life. But we do understand that there is an objective meaning and purpose of life, and each one of us has to align ourselves with that. So those who are monks and are pursuing spiritual reality, they have a distinctive contribution.
So the next question, Prabhu, is what might be the problem with playing video games? I'm not hurting anyone. There's no sex involved. I'm just playing video games. This is a very common thing that millennials and Gen Zs are dealing with.
Now, I come from a particular tradition, and in the past, there was no such thing as video games. So, what would the tradition's wisdom say about video games? Different present practitioners of the tradition may have different opinions about it. So, I will tell both sides, and then I'll try to balance it. So, one side is that we are living at a particular level of reality, it's a physical reality, but we belong to a higher level of reality, that is spiritual reality. So the purpose of life is to rise from physical reality to spiritual reality. And one of the impetuses for rising towards spiritual reality is that physical reality is often unfulfilling. It is at best boring, it is quite often frustrating. So when that happens, we try to rise toward a higher level. Is there something more in life? This is so stale, so dry. That's the impetus for moving towards spiritual reality. But when we create a virtual reality that is actually unreality, there is no reality to it, and we start finding stimulation in that, then that becomes a replacement to spiritual reality. Now, it is not a replacement because it does not bring meaning and purpose in our life. It does not give us anything enduring. It's more of an escape. So, in that sense, what we are doing is we are going. So, if physical reality is here, spiritual reality is here, by going into virtual reality, we are going further away from physical reality, further away even from physical reality, and further away from spiritual reality. In that sense, it is counterproductive for a person's spiritual growth, for even a person's self-awareness. Because in one sense, we are running away from reality to try to find some stimulation elsewhere. And that's one perspective. The other perspective is that the Gita talks about three modes: Satva, Rajas, and Tamas. Goodness, passion, and ignorance. Everything in the world can be classified into these three things. So, goodness means a person is a little more contemplative, a little more analytical. Passion means just running around, getting things done. And ignorance means a person very lethargic. So, my understanding is with respect to internet or social media or even with respect to video games, they may fall in these three categories. Or the way we engage them may fall with them, it may fall in these three categories. So, some video games may actually help a person develop better language skills, maybe better motor skills, better negotiation skills, various skills. So, those may be like a break, a relaxing and a relaxing break that also helps a person learn something valuable, which they can use in their life. So the Gita also talks about vihara. We need recreation, regulated recreation. But then in the mode of passion, we say that there may not be sex in video games. Of course, there are many video games which involve virtual sex also. But there may be a lot of violence and action and shooting, and that is destructive. So that could be there. And then that may not translate into real life, but that will create certain impressions. And then there is the mode of ignorance where we play video games not for relaxation, not for some developing self creative skills. We use video games to run away from reality. And then one just obsesses on achieving something within the video games. Oh, I become number one over here, I do this, I do that. And then that becomes a replacement for the real world. That is dangerous. So if you consider these two perspectives, my understanding would be that if one is playing video games as a means for relaxation and is also doing something which is helping one learn certain skills or develop certain values, it's not corrupting one's consciousness, then those kind of video games are fine. But otherwise, especially if we are using it to run away from reality. Now, most people will not say I'm running away from reality, but we have to be honest to look at it. What am I doing with this?
Right.
So then that would be harmful.